In the town where I lived, there was an abandoned apartment with 2 floors. It had broken windows and dirty, crumbling walls, so no locals would ever go near it. One day, me and my friends decided to explore the place. It was still early in the afternoon and there was a lot of light, so we ventured on to the second floor. And there, on one of the doors, we found some graffiti. We went closer to have a look and found some words that said, "I am in the room ahead." We decided to go through the door. We walked until we reached a fork. On the wall it said, "I am on the left." We were getting slightly scared but decided to turn left. Then we came to the place where there were rooms on both sides of us, and on the wall it said, "My head is on the left and my body is on the right." My friend, as soon as he saw it, lost nerve and ran away, but I decided to stay and, mustering all my courage, walked through the door on the right. I walked to the farthest wall in the room, and on the wall it said, "My body is underneath." I looked down and on the floor and it said, "My head is coming here from the room on the left. Don't look behind you." Quickly, I flung myself through the window and ran away. Since then, I have never been near that place. This is my friend's experience. When he first entered university and started living on his own, he began to experience sleep paralysis frequently. At the same time, he began to get many wrong phone calls. For example, he received a lot of messages from a strange old woman on his answering machine, and once he even got a message from one stranger saying, "Your father is dead," and that nearly gave him a heart attack. His father was, of course, alive. One day he was dozing on his bed when he saw someone running on his balcony. Without thinking, he shouted, "Hey, you!" And it seemed this annoyed the person on the balcony, and he came into my friend's bedroom. At first, my friend thought the man was alone and he thought he would just kick him out. But the man wasn't the only one on the balcony. There were other people and they kept coming in until there were around 5 or 6 people who stood surrounding his bed. And my friend became paralyzed, seemingly from fear. He couldn't do anything with his paralyzed body and he just kept saying to them in his mind, I'm sorry," over and over. That seemed to have worked and the people left his room. After they were gone, my friend fearfully went out on the balcony to take a look around. His house is on the 5th floor and his balcony and his neighbor's balconies on both sides were separated by walls. The walls were special ones that were breakable in case of emergency, but they weren't broken and no one could possibly have passed through the balcony. My friend thought it all had been a dream. And then, days had passed since he had that experience, and he no longer remembered about the dream. One night, he was drinking with his friend in his room, and they were talking and enjoying themselves when his friend suddenly shouted, "Hey, you there," and tried to go out on the balcony. He asked the friend, "What's wrong?" The friend told him that just now he saw some men running on the balcony. It was then that my friend remembered that he had exactly the same experience before, and that he had never told anyone about it. A taxi driver was driving in a random area's name when he saw 3 girls standing by the road with their hands raised. Customers, the taxi driver thought, and stopped his car to pick them up. "Where are you off to?" the taxi driver asked, and they answered that one of the girls had a stomachache and wanted to be taken to the hospital. The taxi driver glanced at the girl in question and noted that the girl certainly looked very pale and seemed to be in great pain. It was an emergency for sure, and decided to take them to the T blank hospital, the closest from where they were, and also the most famous hospital in the area. When they arrived at the hospital, the girls told him, "We would like to stay with her," i.e. the girl with the stomachache. "So if you don't mind, could you please go inside and get someone?" The taxi driver agreed to the request and went to the hospital's front desk. There, he told the nurse what had happened and asked her if she could go have a look at the patient in the car. The nurse said okay and went to the car park, leaving the taxi driver at the front desk. Some minutes later, the nurse came back to the front desk, ashen-faced. "What did you do that for?" she asked. The taxi driver had no idea what she meant. "Why did you do it?" said the nurse again. "Why do you have dead bodies in your car?" According to the nurse, a few days ago, some college girls met an accident while driving in the area. They were brought to the hospital, but in spite of all efforts to save them, they all passed away, and their bodies had been placed in the mortuary. But the bodies in the taxi and the bodies of the college girls were unmistakably one and the same. "What were you trying to do by stealing the bodies from our hospital?" The nurse pressed him for an answer, but when the taxi driver picked up the girls, they appeared to be nothing but alive. Needless to say, the place where the taxi driver picked up the girls was the same place where the girls had the accident. I wonder what these girls wanted to do. This happened when I had just moved to a city and started a life of my own. One late night, I was walking home after a staff welcome party at the office. The apartment where I lived stood in the middle of a quiet residential area, and at night it was even quieter with hardly any people in the streets. I was quite scared as I was walking alone. When at last my apartment came into view, I saw a woman walking down the street towards me. The woman walked with a noticeable stagger. I didn't pay too much attention to her, as she was a woman, and I thought I would be safe. I was about to get inside my apartment when the woman bumped into a van that was parked in front of the entrance and fell right down on her face. When I looked at her closely, she was wearing sunglasses and in her hand was a white stick. I hurriedly ran to help her and asked if she was alright. She muttered something to the effect of "I'm fine" in a quiet and inarticulate voice. She seemed to be still in her 20s and also seemed visually impaired. I felt sorry for her because she was walking on her own in the middle of the night in such a condition. I asked her, "Where are you heading to?" The woman again muttered something like, "I'm visiting a friend who lives in an apartment around here, but I lost my way." And then she said, "I don't know where I am right now. If you know this area, can you help me find my friend's house?" I thought it was just natural to help visually impaired people and said, "Okay." Then, "Please, lend me your arm and we can go together," the suddenly perky woman said, and we started walking together. We walked arm in arm. The woman often asked me questions such as, "What do you see now?" And she led the way by giving me orders such as, "Then we turn left here," or "Turn right at the next corner." It was very dark around us. At one point, a car drove past us and the light from it fell on her face, and I got a glimpse of her eyes behind the sunglasses, and she was clearly watching my expression. That definitely made me feel suspicious, and I began to feel scared about the situation in which I found myself in. The woman firmly had both her arms entwined with my right arm, and I was holding a bag in my left hand. But I thought to myself, what if she was really handicapped? And I felt guilty about being suspicious, and in the end we walked for a good 15 minutes. Also, the subjects she chose to talk about while we walked were really bizarre and freaky. "The person I'm about to see is also handicapped," she said. "He is still at primary school, and he has lost both of his arms. He has been depressed for a long time, so I decided to knit him a jumper, but I wasn't certain what to do with the arm parts." Listening to her was the freakiest thing I had ever experienced in my life, and I was near to tears as I tried my best to respond to her. The more we walked, the darker and quieter the streets became. I had even begun to think about getting into a fight with her, if necessary, in order to get away, when she said, "I think we are nearly there. Could you please tell me the apartment's name?" I told her the name, and she said, "Okay, I'm fine now. Thank you." She released me without problems. Oh no. I knew I was wrong, I thought, ashamed of myself. But as soon as I began to calm down, I became suspicious of her again. How, for example, did she know which ways were wrong or right? It bothered me so much that I decided to see what she was going to do from the next corner of the street. And in less than a minute, I saw the same woman coming down the stairs of the apartment with steady, light steps. So I had been right about her all along. She had played a prank on me. I was going to make a complaint to her when I saw another person coming down the stairs. The person was a man about in his late 20s, very fat, and what's more, without arms. The pair kept looking around them restlessly as if they were expecting someone, and they kept whispering to each other, although I couldn't hear what they were saying. Then, all of a sudden, the woman began to violently pull at the man's sweatshirt, almost as if she was trying to tear it apart. The man tried to resist, but in the end, he got stripped of the clothes and went naked above the waist. The sight of his naked, armless shoulders and the sudden violent outburst of the woman shocked me into crying. It was all I could do to not scream. I wanted to run away, but my legs had already turned to jelly, and I was also scared that they might see me and start chasing after me. The armless man was rolling on the ground and screaming some incoherent words. The woman then took out something that looked like a vacuum bottle from her bag and started pouring a large amount of some liquid over the half-naked man. Steam was coming out from the liquid, which indicated that it was very hot, and the man let out a hair-raising scream. But no one in the neighborhood was coming out to see what was going on. I couldn't stand the fear any longer and ran away. Fortunately, no one came after me. I ran back into my apartment and locked myself in. I was teary and shaky for the whole rest of the evening. I still wonder what it was that I saw. Has anyone had a similar experience before? This happened 6 years ago. This happened at a much later date. About 2 years had passed since then, and I had almost forgotten about it all. One day I was in a department store. I was passing through a floor to get to the escalator when I noticed a familiar figure. I gave the person a quick glance as I walked by, and it was the woman. She wore the same clothes and the same sunglasses. There was no mistake. She was not holding the white stick, but this time one of her arms was missing, or that was how it looked to me. The woman didn't seem like she had noticed me, and when she was standing with downcast eyes. In front of her was a pram, and she was trying to do something to the baby with her one arm. The mother of the baby was looking at shelves and was unaware of what was happening. I took it all in 1 second, and in a flash I was running down the escalator. I dashed back home, and I was again in tears. I don't want to get involved with the woman in any way ever again. I was worried about the baby, but I had never told a soul about it now. I get depressed whenever I think I might see her again somewhere in the future.
Big up to all my peoples. I done dug into my bag of tricks, came up with some different skits. Not your average mafia, I be on some different shit. You know I'm pimping shit that make you use your mind. So if you can fill in the blanks, do it when it's time. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Feel like I'm in hell, but I wish I wasn't. Yeah, you got it, now knock it. While I rock it, I stick plugs in the socket and money in my. Yo, I get psychotic when you try to diss my staff. No